Have you ever loved someone so deeply that it felt like your entire world revolved around them? Maybe you've stayed awake at night worrying about their feelings, their choices, or whether they'd stay or go, tying your peace of mind to something entirely outside your control. It's a pain as old as time. The more we cling, the more we suffer. But what if there was a way to love fully without losing yourself in the process? The Stoics, those ancient philosophers known for their unshakable calm, offered a surprising answer: detachment. Not the cold, indifferent kind, but a mindful balance that lets you care deeply while remaining rooted in your own strength. As Epictetus once said, some things are within our control, and some things are not. And that simple distinction changes everything. This isn't about shutting down your heart or building walls. It's about understanding where your power truly lies, in your own thoughts, actions, and reactions, rather than handing that power over to others. Imagine loving someone without the constant fear of losing them. Imagine feeling deeply, yet never being ruled by those feelings. That's the Stoic secret. Detachment isn't a lack of love, it's love's wisest form. It's the space where you can hold someone close without suffocating them or yourself. In this video, we'll explore how Stoic philosophy transforms detachment from a myth of coldness into a superpower for relationships. You'll learn how to nurture connections without drowning in them, how to care without clinging, and how to protect your peace without shutting out the world. Because here's the truth: the strongest love isn't the one that consumes you, it's the one that lets you grow both together and apart, and that's a journey worth taking. Stoic detachment might sound like pulling away, like stepping back so far that you stop caring, but that's not it at all. Think of it instead as stepping into your own center, so you can engage with the world and the people you love from a place of clarity, not chaos. The Stoics weren't advocating emotional numbness, they were teaching emotional resilience. Seneca put it beautifully in his letters when he wrote about friendship: hold your loved ones close, but never so tightly that you crush them or yourself. That's the balance. Healthy detachment means caring deeply without letting that care consume you. Picture a parent watching their child take their first solo bike ride. There's fear, yes, but also trust. The parent doesn't cling to the bike, but they're fully present, ready to cheer or comfort. That's Stoic detachment in action. Love without suffocation, concern without control. Now imagine applying that to your own relationships. Setting boundaries isn't about building walls. It's about creating space where both people can breathe. Maybe it's resisting the urge to check your partner's phone, not because you don't care, but because you trust. Or it's choosing not to fix a friend's problem for them, but to listen instead, because real support often means stepping back so they can step up. Here's where we often get tripped up: mistaking detachment for disconnection. Ever found yourself shutting down emotionally because you're afraid of getting hurt? That's not Stoicism, that's self-protection masquerading as wisdom. True detachment isn't closing the door on your feelings, it's refusing to let those feelings slam the door on your peace. So here's a question to sit with: when has your attempt to not care too much actually pushed people away? Because detachment done right doesn't isolate, it connects, but on terms that honor both your heart and your sanity. The secret to loving without losing yourself begins with a simple but radical shift: understanding what's truly yours to hold onto. Epictetus drew a line through the center of human experience. On one side, our own judgments, actions, and desires. On the other, everything else, including how others feel about us. That line is the foundation of Stoic detachment. When you love someone, you can pour your energy into being kind, honest, and present. But you can't control whether they'll stay, how they'll respond, or if they'll love you back the same way. And that's okay. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote in his private journals, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't about giving up, it's about focusing where your power actually lies. Think of it like tending a garden. You can water the plants, pull the weeds, and nourish the soil, but you can't force the sun to shine or the rain to fall. Does that mean you stop gardening? Of course not. You do your part, then let go. Love works the same way. You choose how you show up, with patience, with respect, with boundaries, but you release the demand for a specific outcome. That's how you preserve your peace while staying open-hearted. Here's where most of us stumble. We confuse effort with entitlement. We think, if I love enough, they'll have to love me back. But that's not how hearts work. The Stoics would say, pour your energy into being loving, not securing love. The irony: when you stop clinging to outcomes, relationships often flourish naturally because you're no longer squeezing them to fill a void in yourself. Try this. Grab a journal and draw 2 columns. In the first, list what you can control in your closest relationship: your honesty, your patience, how you communicate. In the second, list what you can't: their moods, their past, their choices. That space between the columns, that's where detachment lives. Not as a barrier, but as a bridge, one that lets you walk forward with both hands open, giving freely but never grasping. Amor Fati, the love of fate. It's a phrase Nietzsche borrowed from the Stoics, but its power stretches far beyond philosophy books. Imagine loving not just the parts of life that feel good, but all of it: the joy, the pain, the unexpected turns, as if every moment were necessary. For the Stoics, this wasn't wishful thinking. It was a radical act of empowerment. Seneca, who endured exile, chronic illness, and the whims of a tyrannical emperor, wrote to a grieving friend, "Do not demand that what happens should happen as you wish. Wish for it to happen as it does, and you will find peace." That's Amor Fati in action, not passive resignation, but an active embrace of reality as it unfolds. Now apply that to love. How many relationships crumble under the weight of expectation? The silent demand that a partner should be different, that circumstances should bend to our will. A modern breakup often leaves bitterness in its wake. If only they'd changed, if only things were fair. But Amor Fati asks a different question. What if this, exactly as it is where your strength grows? The Stoics would argue that heartbreak doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, not as punishment but as preparation. Every ending carries the seeds of a new beginning, if you're willing to hold them. Think of a tree in winter. It doesn't rage against the cold, it rests knowing spring will come. That's the wisdom of loving what is. When a relationship ends, instead of replaying the what ifs, try this. Stand in the reality of the loss, not as a victim, but as a student. What did this love teach you? Where did it reveal your edges, your fears, your capacity to endure? The Stoic practice of journaling, like Marcus Aurelius did, helps here. Write down 3 gifts this relationship gave you, even in its ending. You'll find that acceptance isn't surrender, it's the ground from which new love can grow. Here's the paradox: when you stop fighting reality, you gain the clarity to change what you can. Amor Fati doesn't mean staying in a harmful relationship. It means seeing it clearly, then choosing without resentment what serves your growth. So ask yourself, how much energy have you wasted wishing a partner were different? Now imagine channeling that energy into loving them as they are, or lovingly letting go. That's the alchemy of Amor Fati, turning even the hardest lessons into fuel for a wiser, more resilient heart. The next time love doesn't go as planned, try whispering Seneca's reminder, "This too belongs to me." And watch how the weight shifts from burden to belonging. There's a Stoic practice that might sound jarring at first: Premeditation of Loss. the premeditation of evils. At its core, it's not about dwelling on doom, but about dissolving the illusion of permanence. Seneca urged his followers to rehearse loss in your mind, not to breed fear, but to strip away the assumption that what we love will always be there. Think of it like this: when you hold a fragile glass, you're careful not because you expect it to shatter, but because you accept that it could. That awareness doesn't ruin the moment, it sharpens your focus, making your grip both gentler and more deliberate. Now apply that to love. Close your eyes and imagine just for a moment that the person you cherish most isn't here tomorrow. Not to torment yourself, but to wake up to the truth. Every conversation, every mundane Tuesday, every shared silence is a gift you're choosing to receive, not a guarantee you're owed. The Stoics weren't teaching pessimism, they were teaching presence. When you stop taking love for granted, you start loving differently. You listen more closely. You argue less. You notice the way their laughter fills a room, or how their hands move when they're excited. Premeditatio malorum isn't a dark cloud, it's the sunlight that makes those details vivid. Here's where modern relationships get stuck. We treat love like a permanent fixture, like a house we'll always live in. But what if we loved like travelers, knowing the stay is temporary? So we savor every creak of the floorboards, every patch of sunlight on the wall. The irony is this: when you stop pretending love is bulletproof, you stop wasting energy on control. You stop obsessing over whether they'll leave and start pouring that energy into how you show up while they're here. Try this exercise tonight. Sit with someone you love and silently acknowledge, just for a breath, that this moment won't last. Then watch what happens. Does it hollow you out, or hollow out the distractions, leaving only what's real? That's the alchemy of Premeditatio malorum. It turns the fear of loss into fuel for deeper connection. Because here's the secret no one tells you: love isn't made weaker by acknowledging its fragility. It's made fearless. Empathy is the bridge between hearts, but enmeshment is the quicks, and that pulls you under. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, drew a crucial line between these two. He wrote, "You can be kind without sacrificing your peace," reminding us that compassion doesn't require drowning in someone else's storm. Picture this: your partner comes home exhausted after a brutal day at work, their frustration palpable. Empathy says, "I see you're hurting, how can I support you?" Enmeshment whispers, "Your pain is now my pain." As you absorb their stress like a sponge, your own mood sinking with theirs. One approach strengthens the connection, the other blurs the boundaries until you forget where they end and you begin. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he understood that carrying others' burdens didn't mean collapsing beneath them. His journals reveal a leader who listened deeply but never confused empathy with ownership. When a friend grieved, he offered presence, not panic. When a citizen suffered, he acted with dignity, not desperation. This is the Stoic balance, holding space for someone's struggle without letting it dictate your inner world. Think of empathy as standing beside someone in a dark room, holding a lantern so they can find their way. Enmeshment is stumbling around in the dark with them, both of you now lost. The difference: one keeps you steady enough to guide, the other leaves no one to light the path. So here's a question to sit with: where do you blur the line between caring and carrying? Maybe it's the friend who vents daily, and you lie awake replaying their problems, or the family member whose choices haunt you as if they were your own. The Stoic remedy isn't cold detachment, it's discernment. Next time someone shares their pain, pause, listen fully, then ask yourself, is this their weight to lift or mine to share? You might offer a meal, a walk, or silent companionship, but you won't hand them your calm as collateral, because true support isn't about losing yourself in another's chaos. It's about being the calm within it. And that's how empathy becomes not just an act of love, but an act of strength. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a practice, an ongoing choice to show up with integrity. The Stoics believed that virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance wasn't just for grand moral dilemmas, but for the quiet, everyday moments of connection. Epictetus called virtue the sole good, not because emotions were irrelevant, but because without virtue, even love could become a force of chaos. Think about it. How many relationships have unraveled not from a lack of passion, but from a lack of these four pillars? Let's start with wisdom, the clarity to see love as it is, not as we wish it to be. Wisdom is what stops us from romanticizing red flags or clinging to potential instead of reality. It's the friend who gently asks, "Are you loving this person or the idea of them?" And courage, that's the strength to set boundaries, to say, "This far, no further," even when your heart aches to give more. Courage is the parent who lets their child make mistakes, the partner who walks away from toxicity despite the loneliness that follows. Then there's justice, the recognition that love isn't ownership. It's treating someone as their own sovereign being, not an extension of your needs. Justice is the opposite of guilt-tripping or silent treatments. It's saying, "Your freedom matters as much as mine." And temperance, that's the art of loving without excess, without smothering, without losing yourself in devotion. It's the difference between pouring a glass of water for someone who's thirsty and drowning them in the ocean of your need. Here's where it gets practical. Imagine applying these virtues to a single argument. Wisdom pauses before reacting, asking, "What's really at stake here?" Courage speaks honestly instead of avoiding conflict. Justice listens as much as it speaks, and temperance keeps the conversation from spiraling into cruelty. Suddenly, a fight isn't a battlefield, it's a forge where the relationship grows stronger. Epictetus once told his students, "First decide who you want to be, then do what you must to get there." That's the heart of virtuous love. It's not about finding the perfect partner, but becoming the kind of person who loves well whether the relationship lasts or not. So here's a challenge. Pick one virtue this week and watch how it shifts your connections. Maybe it's the courage to voice a need you've buried, or the temperance to give space instead of demanding reassurance. Because when you anchor love in virtue, you're no longer at the mercy of fleeting emotions. You're building something unshakable. Imagine sitting across from someone you love, but your mind is miles away replaying an old argument, drafting tomorrow's to-do list, or worrying if they're upset with you. The conversation unfolds, but you're not really there. The Stoics called this prosoph mindful attention, and for them, it wasn't just a practice for meditation cushions, but for the messy, beautiful reality of relationships. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journals, "Give yourself fully to the present action. Stop letting life leak through your fingers like sand." He wasn't talking about grand gestures. He meant the quiet art of showing up completely for the person in front of you. Active listening is the ultimate act of rebellion in a distracted world. Think about the last time someone truly listened to you, not just waited for their turn to speak, but absorbed your words like they mattered. That's Stoic mindfulness in action, anchoring yourself in the now without hijacking the moment with your own anxieties or agendas. Contrast that with the way most of us communicate, half listening while scrolling, nodding along while mentally critiquing their tone, or rehearsing what we'll say next. The Stoics would say you're not just robbing the other person, you're robbing yourself of the chance to connect deeply. Here's the paradox: the more you focus on the present, the less you fear the future. When you're fully immersed in a conversation, not strategizing or second-guessing, you sidestep the drama your mind loves to create. Marcus Aurelius faced empire-shaking crises, yet his private writings reveal a man obsessed with micro moments. The curve of his son's smile, the weight of a shared silence, the way sunlight fell across his desk as he wrote. He knew that presence wasn't passive, it was the foundation of trust. A relationship built on distracted glances and fragmented attention is like a house on stilts. It might stand, but it won't weather storms. Try this tonight. For one conversation, commit to listening like it's your last. Notice their pauses, not just their words. Watch how their hands move when they're excited. Resist the urge to fix or deflect, just be there. You'll discover something profound. When you stop trying to control where the conversation goes, you actually hear where it needs to go. The Stoics didn't preach mindfulness to make us monks. They taught it to make us better lovers, friends, and humans. Because presence isn't just a gift you give others, it's the way you reclaim your own life from the clutches of worry. And that changes everything. Consider an archer drawing back their bow, eyes locked on the target. Their focus isn't on whether the wind will carry the arrow astray or if a sudden noise might startle them. Their job is to aim true, release with skill, and accept whatever happens next. Epictetus used this exact metaphor to explain detachment. The archer's art is to shoot well, not to guarantee a hit. In love, we often reverse this logic. We fixate on the outcome, the wedding ring, the lifelong commitment, the unshakable certainty, as if those ends justify any means, any suffering along the way. But here's the truth the Stoics saw clearly. Attachment to specific outcomes doesn't secure them. It only magnifies the pain when life unfolds differently. Modern dating culture thrives on hidden contracts, the unspoken expectation that if you love someone enough, they'll change, or that if you check enough boxes together, happiness is guaranteed. But what if you approached relationships like that Stoic archer? Pour your energy into the process, being present, honest, and kind while releasing your grip on how things should turn out. Imagine going on a first date without mentally scripting the next 5 years. Imagine loving someone without demanding they become your forever in order to matter. That's the freedom detachment offers, the ability to cherish what is instead of resenting what isn't. Take marriage as an example. For some, it's a beautiful shared goal. For others, it becomes a noose of anxiety, a finish line they fear they'll never cross. But ask yourself, is it the partnership you truly value or the label that comes with it? The Stoics would argue that a relationship's worth isn't measured by its duration or legal status, but by how it nurtures both people's growth. A couple can spend decades together in quiet desperation, while another might share a single transformative year and part ways with mutual respect. The difference lies in where you place your focus, on controlling the outcome or cultivating the connection in front of you. Here's a practice to try. Grab a pen and finish this sentence. This relationship will only work if, maybe you wrote, if we get married, or if they stop being so distant. Now cross out everything after if. That's the expectation you're clinging to, the one that's holding your peace hostage. This isn't about abandoning dreams. It's about distinguishing between intentions and demands. You can hope for marriage while still finding joy in the unwritten story. You can desire closeness without punishing the other person or yourself for the natural ebb and flow of intimacy. Epictetus warned his students, happiness begins where obsession with results ends. When you stop treating love like a transaction, I give this, so I deserve that, you start experiencing it as an unfolding journey. The person who dates without rigid expectations isn't settling, they're seeing more clearly. They notice the way their partner's eyes light up when they talk about their passion, or how they show care in small, unexpected ways, details that get drowned out when you're fixated on milestones. So the next time you feel that familiar grip of anxiety, will this last? Do they love me enough? Return to the archer's stance. aim with your whole heart, then let the arrow fly. The target was never yours to control. Boundaries often get misunderstood as barriers, as if putting up walls means shutting people out, but the Stoics saw them differently. To Seneca, a well-fortified city wasn't about isolation. It was about having gates that could open and close as needed. Picture ancient Rome. Its walls weren't built to repel everyone, but to protect what mattered inside, so commerce, culture, and connection could thrive because safety was guaranteed. That's the heart of Stoic boundaries. They're not rejections of love, but the very thing that makes love sustainable. Think about the last time you said yes when every fiber of you wanted to say no. Maybe it was covering for a coworker's negligence yet again, or tolerating a partner's dismissive tone because confrontation felt too risky. In those moments, you weren't being kind, you were eroding yourself. Seneca warned that without boundaries, we don't just lose our time or energy, we lose our identity. Like a city with broken gates, we let others dictate what enters and exits until we no longer recognize the terrain of our own lives. Here's where Stoic wisdom flips the script, saying, no to what drains you isn't selfishness, it's stewardship. Imagine a friend who constantly vents but never asks how you're doing. You might fear that setting a limit, I care about you, but I can't be your only sounding board, will push them away. But what if that boundary is what saves the friendship? The Stoics would argue that resentment grows where boundaries don't. And isn't it true? The relationships that exhaust us are rarely the ones where we've communicated our limits clearly. They're the ones where we've silently martyred ourselves. Marcus Aurelius modeled this as emperor. He could have drowned in the demands of his people, but his journals reveal a man who knew his limits. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Even with the weight of an empire on his shoulders, he understood that not every plea required his panic, not every crisis demanded his collapse. That's the power of boundaries. They let you engage with the world without being engulfed by it. So ask yourself, where have you left your gates unguarded? Maybe it's the family member who treats your time as an open buffet, or the partner who mistakes your patience for permission to disregard your needs. Try this exercise. Write down one non-negotiable, not a rigid rule, but a standard for how you deserve to be treated. Then notice, does the thought of voicing it scare you? If so, that's the exact wall that needs reinforcing. Because here's the paradox Stoics knew centuries ago. The people who respect your boundaries are the ones who never needed them in the first place. And those who protest, they were banking on your lack of them. Boundaries aren't about keeping love out. They're about keeping you intact so the love you give is genuine, not guilt-driven. That's the Stoic secret. The strongest connections aren't built on endless compromise, but on mutual respect for each other's inner citadel. And that's how you love without losing yourself, not by building higher walls, but by knowing which gates are worth opening and when. Gratitude might seem like an unlikely tool for detachment after all. Isn't it about holding things dear? But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, gratitude wasn't just appreciation. It was a way of anchoring yourself in the present so firmly that the fear of losing something couldn't shake you. Marcus Aurelius began his days with a simple ritual. When you rise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the key. When you train yourself to see love as a gift rather than a given, you stop clutching it like a lifeline and start holding it like a sunrise, something to marvel at, not something you could ever own. Think about the difference between admiring a flower in a garden and yanking it from the soil to keep for yourself. One leaves room for wonder, the other kills what you hope to preserve. Gratitude works the same way in relationships. When you pause to truly savor the way your partner makes you laugh, or how your friend remembers the small details of your life, you're not just noticing their goodness, you're reinforcing your ability to love without demand. The Stoics called this present moment appreciation, and it's the antidote to possessiveness. Here's a practice to try. Take out a journal and list 3 things you genuinely love about someone in your life. Not traits you hope they'll change or ways they could be better, but qualities that exist right now. Maybe it's their stubborn optimism, the way they hum when they're cooking, or how they listen with their whole body. Then sit with this question. Do these things lose their value if the relationship changes? You'll start to notice something profound. Gratitude doesn't just highlight what you have, it loosens the grip of needing it to stay the same. This isn't about pretending loss wouldn't hurt. It's about recognizing that love's beauty isn't diminished by its impermanence. A sunset isn't less stunning because it fades. Its fleeting nature is what makes it sacred. The Stoics believed that by focusing on what we get to experience rather than what we must keep, we free ourselves from the tyranny of clinging. So ask yourself, how often do you miss the joy of loving someone because you're too busy fearing its end? Gratitude flips that script. It teaches you to drink deeply from the well without demanding it never run dry. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." That's the balance. Love fully but lightly. Cherish the moments without chaining them, because gratitude at its core is the art of loving what's in front of you, not as a guarantee, but as a gift. And that shift changes everything. We all wear costumes in life: parent, partner, caregiver, provider. But here's the trap when we mistake the costume for our skin. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher born into slavery, saw this clearly. He taught that roles are like masks we hold up, not faces we're fused to. Remember, he said, you're an actor in a play written by fate. Your job isn't to rewrite the script, but to perform your part with grace and then return the mask when the scene ends. That's the art of non-attachment to roles, loving what you do without confusing it with who you are. Consider the parent who's spent decades defining themselves solely through their children. When the nest empties, it's not just a house that feels hollow, it's their identity. But what if that transition wasn't a loss but an unveiling? The Stoics would say that roles, no matter how cherished, are temporary assignments. They shape us, but they shouldn't contain us. Like an actor stepping off stage after a powerful performance, we're meant to hang up the costume and remember, I am more than this role. I was before it began, and I'll be after it ends. This isn't about diminishing the importance of relationships, it's about expanding your sense of self beyond them. Think of a tree with deep roots. The roots don't define the tree, they anchor it so it can grow taller, branch wider. In the same way, when you stop tying your worth to a single role, you give yourself permission to grow in unexpected directions. The mother who rediscovers her love for painting after years of soccer practices and packed lunches isn't betraying her family. She's honoring the full spectrum of who she's always been. Here's where modern culture gets it backward. We praise self-sacrifice as the highest form of love, as if losing yourself in service to others is noble rather than limiting. But the Stoics would argue that the healthiest relationships aren't built on self-erasure, but on wholeness. Imagine 2 people standing together, each fully rooted in themselves, not leaning so heavily that they'd collapse without the other, but close enough to share shade. That's the balance. So ask yourself this: who are you when no one's calling you mom, honey, or boss? Peel back those layers, and you might find forgotten passions, dormant curiosities, or quiet strengths that got buried under duty. Maybe it's the way you light up when discussing astronomy, or how your hands remember the piano keys even after 20 years. Those aren't distractions from your roles, they're reminders of your humanity. Epictetus warned his students, If you tie your happiness to external things, you'll always be at their mercy. That includes the titles we cling to. The parent who fears an empty nest isn't grieving the child's independence. They're confronting the void they forgot to fill within themselves. But here's the gift of non-attachment. When you stop defining yourself by any single role, you become unshakable. Jobs change, relationships evolve, children grow, and through it all, you remain not as a collection of labels, but as the one constant in every scene of your life's play. Try this today. Take off one mental costume just for an hour. Be a partner without the weight of should, a parent without the cloak of control, a professional without the armor of perfection. Notice what's left when the role isn't wearing you. That's where your real power lies, not in the parts you play, but in the person who plays them. And that's a role no one can ever take from you. True compassion isn't about carrying someone else's burdens. It's about giving them the strength to carry their own. Seneca put it bluntly, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, but if you keep casting the line for him, you rob him of his dignity. The Stoics drew a sharp line between support and substitution, between lifting someone up and becoming their crutch. Think of a friend going through a breakup. You could spend hours analyzing their ex's flaws, plotting revenge, or even texting on their behalf. But what does that really solve? Stoic compassion asks a harder question. How can I stand beside them without stripping them of their agency? Picture this. Your best friend keeps dating partners who disrespect them. Every time it ends, they spiral, and you rush in venting with them, bad-mouthing their ex, maybe even loaning money to fix the pain. It feels like love, but there's a hidden cost. Seneca warned that rescuing others from every consequence teaches them only one lesson: helplessness. Now imagine a different approach. You listen without fueling the drama. You ask, what did this teach you about what you deserve? You might even say, I won't trash your ex because I respect you too much to pretend this was all their fault. That's Stoic compassion, holding space for growth instead of bandaging wounds that need air to heal. The irony, the people we love most often trigger our savior complex. A child struggling in school, it's easier to do their project than watch them fail. A sibling stuck in debt, simpler to bail them out than witness the struggle. But resilience isn't born in comfort zones. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the obstacle becomes the way, meaning the very challenges we try to shield others from are the ones that forge their strength. Here's how to spot the difference between helping and hindering. Ask yourself, am I doing something they could do themselves? If you're drafting your roommate's resume because they're too stressed, or calling your adult child's boss to complain about their schedule, you're not helping, you're hijacking. Real support looks like sitting with them while they draft the resume, or role-playing a tough conversation so they can advocate for themselves. It's the difference between handing someone a map and insisting on driving the car. Stoic compassion requires a spine of steel and a heart of velvet. It's saying, I believe in you too much to rob you of this struggle, even when every instinct screams to intervene. Because true love isn't measured by how much pain we spare others, but by how much strength we help them discover in themselves. So next time someone you love is floundering, pause. Offer your presence, not your takeover. Sometimes the most powerful way to say, I'm here for you, is to quietly step back and let them rise. Look at a river, never the same water twice, yet always unmistakably itself. The Stoics saw life this way, an ever-moving current where clinging to any moment is like trying to hold water in your fists. Marcus Aurelius wrote, time is a river, a violent current of events, glimpsed once and already carried past us. He wasn't lamenting change, he was pointing to its inevitability. Just as winter doesn't begrudge spring for coming, or a tree resent its leaves for falling, we're called to love what's here without demanding it stay. Think about friendships that once felt unshakable. Maybe it was a college roommate who knew your secrets, or a co-worker who got you through brutal projects. Then life shifted, they moved, priorities changed, and the calls grew fewer. Modern culture tells us this is failure, but nature disagrees. Forests don't mourn last year's fallen leaves. They compost them into richer soil for new growth. Some relationships are meant to be seasons, not lifetimes, and that doesn't diminish their worth. The laughter shared over late-night diner fries at 2 a.m. The tears wiped in hospital waiting rooms, those moments weren't cheapened because they weren't permanent. They were gifts, not guarantees. Now ask yourself, what relationship are you trying to freeze in time? Is it the childhood friend you still text out of obligation, though the conversations feel hollow? The partner you hope will go back to how they were, even as you both evolve. The Stoics would say this isn't love, it's resistance. Love flows, control stagnates. Like a river carving canyons, time reshapes all things, and fighting that only leaves you exhausted. Here's the practice. Next time you catch yourself longing for how something was, pause. Name one way it's different now, then one way it's still beautiful. Maybe your old friend doesn't know your daily life anymore, but they're the only one who remembers how you looked in your first prom dress. Maybe your partner's less spontaneous, but they've become the steady hand you lean on. Impermanence doesn't steal meaning. It asks us to find it anew each day. Marcus Aurelius kept a reminder in his pocket. Soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at best. Morbid, no liberating. When we stop pretending anything lasts forever, we start living like it matters today. So let the river move. Some people will float beside you for miles, others will ripple away at the bend. What matters isn't the distance traveled together, but the depth of the current you shared while it lasted. Imagine living in a world where every opinion about you stuck like glue, where your choices, your passions, even your quirks were constantly weighed on someone else's scale. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery and exile, had a blunt question for this dilemma. If someone called you purple, would you rush to die yourself? His point wasn't just about ignoring insults, it was about recognizing how often we hand over our self-worth to people who don't even know our hearts. Love in its purest form isn't about seeking approval, it's about embodying authenticity, even when the crowd murmurs disapproval. Take the artist who trades their passion for a practical career to appease their parents. Or the person who stays in a relationship because leaving would disappoint friends. These aren't acts of love, they're acts of fear, mistaking conformity for connection. The Stoics drew a radical line here. Caring about someone doesn't mean catering to them. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his journals reveal a man more concerned with his own integrity than his popularity. It never ceases to amaze me, he wrote, how we value others' opinions over our own souls. Here's the litmus test whose judgment silences you. Maybe it's the relative who scoffs at your unconventional path, or the partner who subtly reshapes your interests to fit their ideal. Every time you shrink to fit someone else's expectations, you're not preserving love, you're erasing yourself. Epictetus' ridicule exercise exposes the absurdity. If you wouldn't panic over being called a nonsense color, why collapse when labeled selfish for setting boundaries or unrealistic for chasing a dream? But detachment from opinions isn't about indifference, it's about discernment. Picture a chef seasoning a dish for a crowd. They'll taste, adjust, consider feedback, but they won't let one diner's preference dictate the entire recipe. That's the Stoic balance. Listen, reflect, then decide for yourself what resonates. Your parents' worries might come from love, but their fears don't have to become your compass. A friend's skepticism might spark reflection, but it shouldn't veto your choices. Try this. The next time you feel the weight of someone's judgment, pause. Ask, is this feedback helping me grow or just pressuring me to conform? The difference is everything. A mentor's critique that sharpens your skills is gold. A coworker's gossip that makes you second-guess your worth is noise. The more you practice this filter, the more you'll notice something liberating. The people who truly love you won't demand you shrink to fit their mold. They'll celebrate the space you take up unapologetically, vibrantly you. Because here's the secret Stoics knew centuries ago. The cost of clinging to others' approval isn't just missed opportunities, it's the slow erosion of your essence. Every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, every time you trade your truth for tolerance, you're not protecting love, you're burying it under layers of performance. Real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't ask you to disappear. It meets you where you are in full color and says, finally, there you are. Joy is the quiet flame that burns within. No wind can extinguish it, no hand can steal it. The Stoics drew a sharp line between this deep, abiding joy and the fleeting highs of happiness. Seneca wrote, "True wealth is not in having many possessions, but in needing few." He wasn't dismissing material comforts, he was pointing to something far more precious, the ability to find richness in simply being, not just in owning. Think of a child's laughter, unburdened by conditions, untainted by the need to possess. They don't love their friends because they have to. They love because love itself is the reward. That's Stoic joy, a love that doesn't clutch, a light that doesn't demand fuel. Happiness often hinges on external validation, a promotion, a romantic gesture, a social media like. But joy, it's the warmth you feel watching rain patter against a window, or the quiet satisfaction of a conversation that leaves you seen. Imagine loving someone this way, not because they complete you, but because their presence adds color to a canvas that was already whole. The Stoics called this eudaimonia, a flourishing that comes from alignment with your own virtue, not from the ever-shifting tides of circumstance. Children embody this instinctively. Watch a toddler share a toy without hesitation, or a preschooler forgive a playground spat within minutes. Their love isn't transactional, it's a natural outpouring like sunlight. They haven't yet learned to tie affection to conditions. I'll love you if you stay, if you change, if you meet my needs. Adults, though, we've mastered the art of turning love into a negotiation. We keep score, we withhold affection as leverage, we confuse possession with devotion, as if love were a thing to be stockpiled rather than a gift to be given freely. Seneca challenged this. Why do you seek outside what can only be found within? He wasn't just talking about material wealth. He was exposing our habit of seeking in others what we refuse to cultivate in ourselves. The partner who demands constant reassurance isn't lacking love, they're lacking trust in their own worth. The parent who micromanages a child's choices isn't expressing care, they're revealing their own fear of irrelevance. Stoic joy flips this script. It asks, can you love someone without needing them to fill your voids? Try this experiment. Think of someone you cherish deeply. Now imagine them moving across the world, pursuing a dream that doesn't include you. Does your love shrink, or does it expand, proud and unshaken? That's the test. Joyful love celebrates freedom. Anxious love demands collateral. The Stoics didn't teach detachment to make us cold. They taught it to make us brave, to love without the crutch of control, to cherish without the weight of expectation. So here's the invitation. Next time you feel the urge to grip tighter, to check a partner's phone, to guilt-trip a friend, to mold a child into your image, pause. Ask yourself, is this love or fear in disguise? Because joy doesn't live in the clenched fist. It blooms in the open hand, the craving for constant reassurance, the texts that don't come fast enough, the compliments that feel too few isn't just a modern relationship quirk. It's an ancient human hunger, one Epictetus mapped out 2,000 years ago with what he called the ladder of desires. Picture a ladder leaning against a wall. At the bottom rung, we cling to external someone else's attention, approval, affection, as if they're lifelines. Each step upward represents loosening that grip, not out of indifference, but because we've found something sturdier within ourselves. The goal isn't to stop wanting connection, it's to stop treating it like oxygen. Take the partner who panics when their phone stays silent for an hour. Beneath that anxiety isn't love, it's a quiet fear that without proof they don't matter. Epictetus would call this a disordered desire, where we mistake someone else's actions for our worth. But here's the pivot: climbing his ladder doesn't mean ignoring your needs. It means distinguishing between wanting someone and needing them to validate your existence. Imagine two people in love. One texts constantly, seeking confirmation. Do you miss me? Am I still important? The other spends an afternoon absorbed in a book, then shares a thought that made them think of their partner, not to elicit a response, but because the connection feels natural, unforced. One is feeding a hunger, the other is savoring a meal. This isn't about playing it cool or suppressing emotions. It's about recognizing when desire has tipped into dependency. Consider the difference between enjoying your partner's praise and requiring it to feel whole. The first is human, the second hands them a remote control to your self-esteem. Epictetus warned his students, freedom isn't secured by filling your pockets but by emptying your wants. In love, that means asking, what am I truly seeking here? If the answer is proof I'm lovable, the work isn't to chase more proof, it's to build the kind of self-trust that doesn't crumble without it. So try this. Pick one love-related craving. Maybe it's the urge to check their social media, or the disappointment when they don't mirror your enthusiasm. Now imagine placing it on Epictetus' ladder. Is it pulling you downward, tying your peace to something outside your control? Or is it lifting you, rooted in your own enoughness? The Stoics weren't anti-love, they were pro-freedom. They knew the healthiest relationships aren't built on two halves desperate to complete each other, but on two wholes choosing to walk side by side. And that starts with climbing one deliberate rung at a time. Forgiveness isn't about excusing the harm someone caused. It's about refusing to let that harm live rent-free in your mind. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Think about that for a second. Holding onto resentment isn't justice. It's self-sabotage, like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. Now imagine two ex-partners years after a breakup. One has moved on, built a fulfilling life, while the other still replays old arguments in their head. Who's truly free? Consider a spilled glass of water. You can wipe it up quickly, or you can let it seep into the wood, warping the table over time. Resentment works the same way. The longer you let it sit, the more damage it does to you. Stoic forgiveness isn't saying, what you did was okay. It's saying, what you did won't define my present. Picture someone who betrayed your trust. Forgiving them doesn't mean handing them back the knife. It means finally taking it out of your own wound so you can heal. Here's the paradox: forgiveness is often framed as weakness when it's actually the ultimate act of self-command. When Seneca's enemies falsely accused him of treason, a charge that led to his exile, he wrote, "They take my reputation but not my character, my possessions but not my mind." He understood that clinging to bitterness only chains you to the past, while releasing it frees you to build anew. Now reflect, what grudge are you carrying that no longer serves you? Maybe it's an ex who moved on too fast or a friend who ghosted when you needed them. Ask yourself, does replaying that pain protect you or just prolong it? The Stoics would say that every minute spent resenting is a minute stolen from your peace. Try this exercise tonight. Write down one old hurt you're ready to release, not for their sake, but for yours. Then burn it, tear it up, or simply set it aside. Watch how the weight shifts when you stop demanding the past be different, because forgiveness, in the end, isn't about them at all. It's about reclaiming the present and yourself. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's the quiet space where you meet yourself without the noise of the world. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, called solitude the ultimate test of self-sufficiency. Be a friend to yourself first, and you'll never lack companionship. Think about that for a moment. The Stoics didn't see alone time as something to endure. They saw it as a sacred practice, a way to strip away the layers of performance and remember who you are when no one's watching. In a world that equates busyness with worth, stillness becomes revolutionary. Picture this: you're sitting in a room with no phone, no distractions, just the sound of your own breath. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, like stepping into cold water. That discomfort isn't emptiness. It's the echo of all the ways we've learned to outsource our sense of self. We scroll to avoid silence, crowd our schedules to dodge reflection, mistake constant connection for intimacy. But here's the truth Stoics knew centuries ago: if you can't bear your own company, you'll always be at the mercy of others' attention to feel whole. Seneca's letters are filled with invitations to solitude. He wrote of mornings spent in quiet reflection, evenings walking alone under the stars, not as punishment but as nourishment. Retreat into yourself, he urged, as often as you can. This wasn't about isolation, it was about recalibration. Imagine a musician tuning their instrument before a performance. Solitude is that tuning, the subtle, necessary work of aligning your inner world so you can engage with the outer one from a place of clarity, not craving. Try this today. Take a walk without headphones, without a podcast, without texting. Just you and the rhythm of your steps. Notice how your mind rebels at first, scrambling for distraction. That resistance is the very attachment the Stoics warned about, the addiction to noise that masks our fear of stillness. But keep walking. Soon you'll start hearing things you've missed, the way leaves rustle in the wind, the distant hum of a city, the cadence of your own thoughts. That's not loneliness, that's reconnection. Ask yourself, what are you really avoiding when you fill every silent moment? Is it boredom, or the quiet voice that whispers truth you've been too busy to hear? The Stoics believed that solitude was where we meet our wisest selves, where the clutter of others' expectations falls away, leaving only what's real. So the next time you feel the itch to reach for your phone in an empty room, pause, sit with the silence instead. It might just be the most honest conversation you've had all day. Love doesn't come with a label maker, yet how often do we slap stickers on the people we care about without realizing it? She's so selfish. He's always distant. Epictetus cut to the heart of this habit. It's not events but opinions that disturb us. That moment your partner forgets an anniversary, it's just a missed date until you label it proof they don't care. The Stoics called this prohesis, the power to choose how we frame what happens. And nowhere does this skill matter more than in love. Think of judgment like a tinted window. When you decide someone is irresponsible, every late arrival or unpaid bill becomes confirmation. But peel off that label and suddenly you see the full picture. Maybe they're juggling 3 jobs to support their family, or they've been conditioned to avoid finances after growing up in scarcity. This isn't about excusing hurtful behavior. It's about recognizing that labels simplify people into cartoons, stripping away their complexity. and your chance to truly understand them. Here's the practice. Next time you catch yourself mentally diagnosing someone's flaws, pause. Ask, is this trait inherently bad or just inconvenient for me? A partner who double-checks every plan might be controlling, or they might be someone who grew up in chaos, for whom preparation feels like safety. The Stoics wouldn't tell you to ignore your needs. They'd invite you to separate observation from indictment. Marcus Aurelius journaled about this daily, reminding himself, "When you wake up, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. But I've seen the beauty of their nature too, and none of this touches mine." Try this exercise with a current frustration. Say your friend consistently cancels plans last minute. Instead of labeling them flaky, get curious. Maybe their anxiety spikes last minute, or they've internalized guilt over saying no. The label keeps you stuck in resentment. Curiosity opens a door to solutions, or at least peace. Here's the radical truth Stoics uncovered. The traits we judge hardest in others are often the ones we fear in ourselves. That needy partner, they might mirror your own unspoken hunger for validation. The aloof friend, a reflection of the walls you sometimes build. Non-judgmental love isn't pretending everything's perfect. It's refusing to let your labels become life sentences. So tonight, when someone you love does that thing that irks you, whisper Epictetus' question. What if this isn't wrong, just different? The space between those words is where real connection begins. Breakups don't just end relationships, they reveal them. Seneca, who endured exile and betrayal, wrote that pain is the teacher no one wants but everyone needs. Think about that. The raw ache of a shattered connection isn't just something to survive. It's a mirror held up to our deepest needs, fears, and unspoken contracts. Modern culture often treats heartbreak like a fire to be smothered, rebound dating, revenge makeovers, or numbing the hurt with distractions, but the Stoics saw it differently. To them, a breakup wasn't an exit sign. It was a crossroads, a chance to ask, what was this relationship really about? Consider two people navigating the same breakup. One jumps into a new fling within weeks, chasing the high of being wanted again. The other sits with the discomfort, journaling through the mess of emotions, tracing patterns. Why did I tolerate so little? Why did I demand so much? The first path offers a temporary salve, the second builds resilience. Marcus Aurelius called this turning obstacles into fuel. Every tear shed over someone who walked away carries a hidden curriculum, lessons about boundaries you didn't set, red flags you romanticized, or perhaps the ways you abandoned yourself to keep the peace. Here's where modern dating gets it backward. We treat breakups like failures, as if love's value is measured by its duration. But the Stoics would argue that a relationship's worth isn't determined by how it ends, but by how it shapes you. A 3-month fling that teaches you to voice your needs might be more valuable than a decade-long marriage spent silencing them. Seneca, in his letters to a grieving friend, didn't dismiss the pain, he reframed it. This wound is the place where wisdom enters. So try this. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what is this trying to show me? Maybe your last breakup exposed a tendency to confuse intensity for intimacy, or a fear of being alone that kept you clinging to the wrong person. Perhaps it revealed how quick you were to shrink your dreams to fit someone else's comfort. These aren't indictments, they're roadmaps. Think of a forest after a fire. The ashes don't signal death, they create space for new growth. Heartbreak works the same way. It burns away illusions, leaving behind fertile ground for a sturdier kind of love, one rooted in self-awareness, not just chemistry. So the next time you're tempted to drown your sorrows in a dating app or ice cream, pause, grab a notebook instead. Write down one hard truth this breakup exposed, not about them, but about you. Because resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were. It's about growing into who you're meant to be. And that's a lesson no happy relationship could have taught you. Love isn't something that happens to you, it's something you decide every single day. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, put it plainly: no man is free who is not master of himself. That distinction between needing and choosing might sound subtle, but it's the difference between building a relationship on solid ground or quicksand. Needing someone means your peace depends on their presence. Choosing them means your peace is already intact, and their presence simply enhances it. One is rooted in lack, the other in abundance. Picture a couple who have been together for years out of habit. They don't fight, but they don't light each other up anymore either. They stay because the thought of being alone terrifies them, because without the label of partner, they're not sure who they are. That's dependency masquerading as love. Now imagine another pair. They argue sometimes, they grow and change in different directions, but every morning they look at each other and silently decide, I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be. That's agency, that's freedom. Epictetus trained his students to ask one brutal question: what are you afraid to lose? Because whatever you cling to out of fear is already controlling you. Staying in a lifeless job because you dread financial instability, that's fear. Remaining in a loveless relationship because you can't face solitude, that's fear too. The Stoics didn't preach detachment to make us cold. They taught it to make us courageous, to love from a place of wholeness, not hunger. Here's the test. If your partner walked away tomorrow, would you unravel, or would you grieve, then rebuild? Needing someone means your identity collapses without them. Choosing them means your identity remains, even if the relationship changes. Think of a tree with deep roots. It doesn't wither when a branch falls, it grows new ones. That's the kind of love Stoicism cultivates, rooted in self-reliance, yet open to connection. So ask yourself tonight, do I need my partner or do I choose them? If the answer leans toward need, that's not failure. It's a wake-up call. Start small. Rediscover a hobby you abandoned for the relationship. Sit with the discomfort of solitude until it becomes familiarity, not fear. The goal isn't to stop loving. It's to start loving from a place of strength, where every I stay is a conscious act, not a reflex. Because the most powerful love stories aren't about two halves becoming whole. They're about two wholes choosing to walk the same path, knowing they could walk alone, but delighting in the journey together. We don't own people, yet how often do we act like we do? Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled Rome at its peak, wrote a reminder to himself in his private journals: what belongs to you? Only your mind and your actions. Everything else, even those you love, is borrowed. That's a staggering thought in a world that treats relationships like property. Parents who dictate their adult child's career path, partners who monitor each other's friendships, friends who guilt trip over changing priorities. These aren't acts of love. They're acts of ownership in disguise, mistaking connection for control. Consider a mother who insists her 30-year-old son shouldn't move abroad for his dream job. She frames it as concern: I just want what's best for you. But beneath that sentiment often lurks a quieter, sharper fear. If you go, who am I? The Stoics would call this a fundamental confusion between love and possession. True love wants what's best for the other person, even when it doesn't align with your own comfort. Possession demands that the other person's choices orbit around your needs. One nurtures, the other suffocates. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly in his own life. As emperor, he could have commanded his children's obedience, his wife's constant presence, his friends' unwavering loyalty. Instead, his meditations reveal a man deeply aware of human autonomy. Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. That last phrase is crucial. Loving with all your heart doesn't mean clutching tighter. It means holding loosely enough that the other person can breathe, grow, and even walk away if their path demands it. Here's the litmus test. When someone you love makes a choice you disagree with, does your reaction come from their well-being or your discomfort? A parent supporting a child's unconventional career might fret over societal judgment, but the Stoics would ask, is this about protecting the child or the parent's reputation? A partner who dislikes their significant other's hobbies might claim concern, but is it truly about safety or about losing shared time? Try this exercise. Picture someone you love holding a string tied to your wrist. Every time they move away, the string tugs. Now ask, how long is that string? Is it short enough to yank them back when they stray too far? Or is it long enough to let them explore while still feeling the gentle reminder of connection? The illusion of ownership thrives when we keep those strings taut, mistaking tension for intimacy. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the shared humanity binding us all, not as possessions but as fellow travelers. Men exist for the sake of one another, he wrote. Either teach them better or bear with them. That's the alternative to ownership, radical respect. It's saying, I love you enough to let you be yourself, even when that self evolves beyond what I recognize, because love isn't a cage. It's the open sky, and no one owns the horizon. Words have weight, especially in anger. Epictetus warned his students, if someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself against what was said, but reply, he must not know my other faults, or he would have mentioned those too. That sharp wit wasn't just about humor, it was a masterclass in measured response. The Stoics understood something critical. Communication isn't just about what you say, it's about the space between stimulus and reaction. Imagine a heated argument where insults fly like arrows. One person escalates, the other absorbs the blow, takes a breath, and responds with precision. That pause, that's where wisdom lies. Think about the last time you snapped at someone you love. Maybe it was a partner forgetting an errand or a friend canceling plans last minute. In the moment, the words probably felt justified, a natural reaction to being wronged. But here's the twist, reactivity isn't honesty, it's attachment in disguise. When we lash out, it's rarely about the situation itself. It's about our unchecked expectations, our silent demands that life and the people in it conform to our scripts. The Stoics called this propathia, the initial flare of emotion before reason intervenes. That split second is where your power lies. Try this exercise next time tension rises. Before speaking, count to 5 silently. Not to suppress your feelings, but to sift them. Ask, is what I'm about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? 3 filters, borrowed from Socrates but sharpened by Stoic practice. You'll start noticing something revelatory. Half the words you swallow in that pause never needed to be spoken. The other half emerge clearer, kinder, and far more likely to bridge gaps rather than burn them. Consider a couple arguing over finances. The reactive response, you never stick to the budget, you're so irresponsible. The Stoic alternative after that critical pause, I'm feeling anxious about our spending. Can we look at this together? Same concern, radically different impact. One attacks the person, the other addresses the problem. Epictetus put it bluntly, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. Listening isn't passive, it's the groundwork for communication that builds rather than breaks. Now reflect, how many fractures in your relationships started with words hurled in haste? The parent who criticized instead of guided, the friend who teased without reading the room, the partner who weaponized vulnerability in a moment of frustration. Stoic communication isn't about muting your voice, it's about refining it. It's recognizing that every conversation is a chance to practice virtue, courage to speak truth, temperance to withhold cruelty, justice to honor the other person's humanity. So tonight, pay attention to your pauses. Notice the heat rising in your chest before a sharp reply. That's not a signal to explode, it's an invitation to choose. Because the strongest relationships aren't built on perfect harmony, but on the willingness to let silence do its work before words do theirs. And in that space, you'll find something unexpected, the power to transform conflict into connection. Holding onto past heartache is like carrying a sack of stones everywhere you go. It slows you down, but somehow feels too familiar to drop. Seneca saw this clearly when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," pointing to the way we keep old wounds alive by constantly revisiting them. Think about the last time you caught yourself comparing a new partner's quirks to an ex's. Maybe they laugh differently or don't share that one hobby your past love adored. That mental checklist isn't just nostalgia, it's a barrier you're building against the present moment, brick by brick. The Stoics had a radical practice for this, Premeditation of the Premeditation of Loss. But its lesser-known counterpart is just as vital, Postmeditatio Liberatio, the deliberate release of what's already gone. Seneca urged his followers to cut away the past like dead branches, not because the memories were meaningless, but because clinging to them starves new growth. Picture a gardener pruning roses. The shears aren't an act of violence, they're an act of care, making space for fresh blooms. Here's where it gets personal. That relationship you can't seem to stop analyzing, the one where you replay arguments like a courtroom drama, rewriting your lines for a better outcome. What's it costing you? The Stoics would say you're paying twice, once in the original pain, and again every time you resurrect it. Marcus Aurelius journaled about this, reminding himself, "The past is nothing but a story we tell ourselves." Not to erase its lessons, but to refuse letting its shadows dictate the present. Try this exercise. Take a relationship that still haunts you and write down 3 things it taught you, not about them, but about you. Maybe you discovered your tendency to people please or your fear of setting boundaries. Then, beneath that list, write, "This served me, now it's time to let it rest." Burn the paper, delete the note, or tuck it away like an old map to a place you've outgrown. The irony, the past only has the power you feed it. That ex who ruined trust. They didn't take it, you just learned not everyone deserves it. The betrayal that made you cold. It didn't steal your warmth, it taught you where to shine it brighter. Stoicism doesn't ask you to forget. It asks you to stop letting yesterday monopolize today's bandwidth. Because here's the secret. The person you're meant to become isn't hiding in the wreckage of old hurts. They're waiting on the other side of release, hands open, heart lighter, finally free to meet what's here now. Stoic love isn't a grand declaration, it's the quiet discipline of showing up day after day in ways that honor both yourself and the people you cherish. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, stop wasting time arguing about what a good person should be, just be one. That's the heart of it, love as action, not just intention. Picture a couple who have been together for decades. Their bond isn't built on dramatic gestures, but on the 1,000 unremarkable moments. The coffee made just how the other likes it, the silent understanding when one has a hard day, the patience to listen even when tired. These aren't accidents, they're choices, repeated until they become character. Boundaries are where Stoic love begins, not walls to keep people out, but gates to protect what matters. Imagine a friend who constantly vents but never asks how you're doing. Setting a limit, "I care about you, but I need our conversations to go both ways," isn't rejection, it's respect for both of you. The Stoics knew that without boundaries, love becomes obligation and resentment creeps in. Presence is the next pillar. How often do you sit with someone while your mind races elsewhere? Active listening, the kind where you're not just waiting to speak, is a radical act in a distracted world. It says, right now, nothing matters more than this moment with you. Then there's virtue, the backbone of Stoic love. Kindness without self-abandonment, honesty without cruelty, courage to walk away when necessary. Think of a parent teaching a child to ride a bike. They don't cling to the seat out of fear. They run alongside, ready to steady but never stunt. That's love rooted in virtue, wanting what's best for the other, even when it's hard. Here's the invitation. Pick one small, deliberate act this week to put Stoic love into practice. Maybe it's resisting the urge to check your phone during dinner, or voicing a need you've been avoiding. Perhaps it's writing a note to someone you've taken for granted, not to earn praise, but because gratitude is its own reward. Love isn't measured by how much you feel, but by what you do with those feelings. So ask yourself, what's one way you can love more like a Stoic today, not perfectly, but intentionally? Because the deepest connections aren't built in grand gestures, but in the quiet, consistent choice to show up as your best self again and again. Some people mistake Stoicism for emotional suppression, as if becoming a Stoic means turning yourself into an unfeeling statue. But here's the truth the ancients knew. Detachment isn't about numbness, it's about clarity. Epictetus saw this confusion even in his own students, calling out what he called Stoic posturing, the performance of indifference as a way to dodge discomfort. Imagine someone who refuses to grieve a breakup, insisting, "I'm fine, it doesn't matter," while their unprocessed pain leaks out as irritability or withdrawal. That's not Stoicism, that's avoidance in philosopher's clothing. The danger lies in using wisdom as a shield instead of a tool. Picture a father who loses his job and tells his family, "No point being upset, it's out of my control," while secretly drowning in shame. Or a friend who shrugs off betrayal with, "People are unreliable," yet grows increasingly cynical in relationships. These aren't examples of mastery. They're emotional bypassing, where Stoic principles become a way to rationalize running from hard feelings rather than facing them. Marcus Aurelius, who journaled openly about his own grief and frustrations, would have called this out. The obstacle is the way means moving through emotion, not around it. Here's the litmus test. Are you practicing acceptance or just pretending not to care? True detachment allows you to feel sadness without being shattered by it, anger without being ruled by it. But false indifference, that's just fear dressed up as philosophy. Think of a tree in a storm. The Stoic approach isn't to deny the wind, it's to bend without breaking. When you numb yourself to pain, you numb yourself to joy too. Seneca, who wrote extensively about grief after losing his own child, warned against this. Tears fall no matter how we try to check them, and the noble heart is not hardened but softened by sorrow. So ask yourself, where might you be using Stoicism as an escape hatch? Maybe it's the coworker's criticism you brushed off as irrelevant, instead of acknowledging it stung. Or the family conflict you dismiss as drama, rather than admitting it hurts. The Stoics weren't against emotion. They were against letting emotion hijack your reason. There's a world of difference between observing your feelings and silencing them. One leads to resilience, the other to resentment. Try this. Next time you feel the urge to say, "I don't care," pause. Dig deeper. Is that really equanimity, or is it armor you've strapped on to avoid vulnerability? Because real strength isn't found in pretending you're invincible. It's found in sitting with the messiness of being human, then choosing how to respond with both wisdom and heart. That's the Stoic tightrope, feeling fully without falling. Social media has turned love into a highlight reel, endless scrolling through curated moments that make our own relationships feel dull by comparison. Seneca saw this human tendency centuries ago when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," pointing to our habit of measuring our lives against illusions. Today, that illusion is the filtered perfection of Instagram couples, the viral relationship goals posts that set impossible standards. The Stoic response isn't to delete all apps or scoff at modern love. It's to ask a more penetrating question: am I comparing my behind the scenes to someone else's spotlight? Consider texting anxiety, that frantic refresh when a message goes unanswered for hours. Ancient Rome didn't have read receipts, but it had its own version. The friend who took too long to reply to a letter, the lover whose gaze wandered at a banquet. Seneca's advice cuts through the centuries. A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. The issue isn't the technology, it's the stories we spin around it. When you interpret a delayed text as rejection, you're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to a narrative you've authored. The Stoic remedy: pause the script. Ask, what's the evidence? What's the worst that could truly happen? Suddenly, the silence isn't a crisis, it's just silence. Modern dating moves at warp speed: swipe right culture, instant chemistry expectations, the pressure to define relationships by the third date. This velocity clashes with Stoic patience, which treats love like a slow-burning candle rather than a firework. Picture two approaches to a new connection. One person rushes to lock it down, peppering dates with "where is this going?" The other focuses on presence. Do I enjoy this person's company today? Do our values align? The first is future tripping. The second is rooted in the only moment we ever truly have, now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not as a rejection of commitment, but as a reminder that healthy bonds grow from attention, not anxiety." Here's where modernity tests us most: the illusion of endless options. Dating apps promise a sea of possibilities, tricking us into believing the perfect partner is one more swipe away. But the Stoics would call this a trap. Epictetus warned, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it." That doesn't mean settling, it means distinguishing between discernment and greed. Are you leaving a relationship because of genuine incompatibility, or because you're addicted to the thrill of the hunt? Are you swiping past real connection in pursuit of some mythical upgrade? Try this experiment for 1 week. Notice when technology amplifies your insecurities. Maybe it's jealousy over a partner's like on someone's post, or frustration when a date doesn't mirror your texting pace. Then apply Seneca's lens. We are often more frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than reality. That double tap isn't betrayal, that delayed reply isn't abandonment. The real work of Stoic love in the digital age isn't rejecting tools, it's mastering your mind's use of them. Because the deepest connections aren't found in algorithms or response times, but in the quiet courage to be present amid the noise. Stoic detachment isn't about loving less, it's about loving freely. Imagine a garden where flowers aren't chained to the soil but trusted to bloom in their own time. That's the heart of this philosophy, removing the weight of dependency so love can breathe. We've walked through the tools, focusing on what's yours to control, setting boundaries that honor both hearts, embracing Amor Fati to love reality as it unfolds. Each is a thread in the same tapestry, weaving resilience into connection. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled an empire yet found his greatest power within, left us with words that cut to the core. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That's the Stoic secret in one line: not control over others, but mastery over how you meet the world and the people in it. This isn't a finish line, it's a starting point. Pick one idea that resonated most. Maybe it's pausing before reacting, or reframing a past hurt as a lesson. Try it this week, not as a grand experiment, but as a quiet practice. Notice how it shifts the weight in your relationships, and if you're willing, share your stories below. How has detachment, or the struggle with it, shaped your way of loving? Your insights might be the lantern someone else needs. For more ways to blend ancient wisdom into modern life, consider joining this community. Every subscription is a nod to the work of tending your inner garden, because the strongest love grows from soil that's been nurtured, not neglected. Until next time, remember, the deepest connections aren't built on clinging, but on the courage to hold space for others and